So welcome everyone. I think people will be joining slowly. But let's start. And let's start together with a moment of landing in the space, being together in silence, and feeling together. Let's start with that. Okay, so welcome to this resident assembly decision-making process. It's actually two RADs in one RAM. RAM is the meeting of today, and which contain, therefore, two topics, two proposals. The RAD proposal 1, sorry, I will read it like, the resident assembly reserves the right to call an emergency RAD, so resident assembly decision-making process with 300 signatures. And the second RAD, the second proposal, is the resident assembly provides emergency powers for 6 months to the resident assembly working committee. So these are the two proposals to be discussed today. We know that there was some concerns about the change of venue, the last-minute change of venue. We suggest that it is placed at another time and space to be discussed because there are different reasons why and different communications about it. Yet, in regard to the validity of this process, in our understanding, it is happening and unfolding. So we are here together. So right now I'm going to hand over to RAS, Resident Assembly Service, Tatiana, to give an update about the different RADs and to give the process and explanation on the process of the resident assembly decision making.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone. So that's our high-tech setup for today to explain you what that decision-making process consists of. So we welcome you here at the first Residents Assembly meeting, where we are going to introduce and discuss the two topics. After that first Residents Assembly meeting, RAS will publish the report and invite feedback from the larger community. After that, the RAS will hand over all the feedback received and will hand it over to the petitioners. So these two proposals, they arrived through a petition supported by more than 60 residents of this community. And the representatives of petitioners will process this feedback. They will integrate into the proposals. And then we are going to call for the follow-up residents assembly meeting. So let's put it like REM2. At the second or follow-up residents assembly meeting, the refined proposal will be presented to the community. The representatives of petitioners will explain what feedback they integrated into the proposals, what not, why, etc. And after that, we will have a pulse to receive the opinion from the audience, from the participants of that residents assembly meeting, follow-up residents assembly meeting, if they feel like this proposal and the voting options are ready, are good enough to go ahead and bring these proposals to the community for a final decision. In such case, we will organize, one second. A 2-week voting. In the policy it says consensus building, but if consensus is not possible, then the voting will go on for a couple of weeks. Otherwise, if at the follow-up residents' assembly meeting, the attendees of the meeting will decide that the proposal or proposals need more work, they need more expertise, more refinement, so then RAS will need to organize as many residents' assembly meetings as needed. And again, we are going to have further rounds of feedback in between. But at the end of the day, when we have this meeting, after 2 weeks, the community, will inevitably arrive at a decision. Thank you. So that was a very brief overview of the process. Now I pass on the mic to Manas to give you more details on the topics that we are going to discuss today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Some of you might be wondering why we are explaining this process, but there was somebody who got in touch with me just before this meeting on WhatsApp saying, are we going to vote today? I really want to be part of voting. So clearly there are people who need a little bit of refresher on the process. I'm not going to describe the proposals. I'm going to say why we are talking about these two RAD proposals, why not anything else. The way this works is that when we started thinking about the RAD process, there were a bunch of proposals that were with us, about 16 or 17 different proposals. So the first thing that we did was we got in touch with the petitioners to ask if they wanted to continue with those proposals. Some of them said no, it's no longer relevant, so those were taken out. We were left with about 10 proposals. Those went to a survey that you might have seen, some of you might have seen and participated in. The survey results were also published. The proposal that got the least votes was AutoNet guidelines. Clearly, we don't need that right now. And the one that got the most votes, the preferred RAD, was reframing or reformulating the master plan. The reason why we don't have it here is because the petitioners and the petitioner representatives need a little more time to work on that proposal. They're not yet ready to start the RAD process for that, the master plan process. So the next two most preferred RADs were these two, which is the emergency RAD, that the Residents' Assembly can call an emergency RAD, and the second is that for a limited time, that the Working Committee be given certain specific emergency powers, which you will know about in just a short while. The other thing is this is the first time, for those of you who have followed decision-making in the past, this is the first time that we're actually conducting two decision-making processes in parallel. Unprecedented move by the RS. So you might also remember that there was one of the proposals was multiple RADs. Go into a decision making to decide whether we should do multiple RADs. We realize that the policy does not stop us from doing multiple RADs. There's nothing in the policy that says you cannot have multiple RADs being done together. So that's exactly what we're doing. And we thought for the sake of time, we'll do these two together. So that's the context for the two RADs. Lisa?
Okay, hello. My name is Enrique, for anyone who doesn't know me. I'll just take you through the agenda so that you know what's going to happen. It's very simple. We have two proposals, and we're going to do the same format for both. So we're just now doing the opening, and then we'll start talking about RAD 1, which is about whether the RAD can also call for whether the Residents' Assembly can also call for an emergency RAD. So we'll start with the presentation of the petitioners. They are represented by Renu, who will do the presentation. And then we will have a discussion all together. So we ask that if you want to add something, if you have a question, please come to the stage and share. If that is very scary for you, we will come and bring you a microphone. Yeah? So at the end of that, we will take a pulse, as we always do. So are we ready to move forward on this topic to the next Residents' Assembly meeting? Then we'll go into RID 2, so the question of the emergency powers for the working committee. The same, there will be a petitioner presentation. Again, the petitioners are represented by Renu. It's amazing, so we don't have to change much. Then we do the same, we have a discussion. Please come forward if you want to, if you have a concern or a doubt. All of this will be recorded, and we will take it into account as feedback for the petitioners to change their proposal. And then we will close and see what are the next steps together. Now, there's been a lot happening also at the moment. So for example, today, the AVFO appointed FAMC met with the forest group. I'm sure you've all heard what's going on with the forest maintenances, which is a concern. And there are some other topics that we might want to discuss. So we close the meeting at 6:30. But there is an invitation to stay behind so that we can get an update, perhaps from a member of the forest group, on this topic and some other topics that we would like to talk about all together. Yeah? Oh, yes. And we don't have tea, unfortunately, but after the meeting, so at 6:30, they will open a snack stall there, and we can just have a little snack and a drink together and relax. Yeah? So, are there any questions now, or is this all clear? Cool. Then I give the mic to our great petitioner. Oh, you want that one?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. So, so you have in your hand, can you all hear me? Yes, hi, my name is Renu, and better, thank you. Thank you. So you all have, since we don't have a PowerPoint, etc., I am going to just read through this thing. It should not take too long. So why this RAD, the first one? The this RAD is to answer the need of residents, answer the need for residents to call an emergency RAD without solely relying on the working committee to do so. The events from 21 to 22 have shown that when members of the working committee, as demonstrated by Anu, Arun, Partha, Srimoy, etc., operate without good faith or consideration of the views of the residents, which they're supposed to represent, then there needs to be a mechanism for the residents to call its own emergency RAD. You may recall after the destruction of the youth center, more than 300, 400 people asked for an emergency RAD and it was refused. So that's just not a tenable situation for the residents. So I tried to put in some details. The RAD is to ensure that the Residents' Assembly is empowered to call for the emergency RAD. Therefore, any petition signed by 300 members of the Residents' Assembly of Oroville may proceed to an emergency RAD as outlined in the Residents' Assembly decision-making policy document. The RAS, as appointed by the Oroville Council, follows the RA internal procedures, will carry out the vote on the petition without delay according to the usual process for emergency RADs as detailed in the participatory working group document, April 2022. And once this is voted on, it will be included into that document. Yeah, that's it. There was a question at one point of instead of having 300 to put a percentage of the population, but upon further reflection and feedback, it was decided that might not be so good because that would change, and then there would be arguments about what is exactly 10%. And so we thought 300 is actually a good number for a society to say, whoa, now this is important. So that concludes RAD number 1.
Okay. If you have question, I will bring the microphone to you directly. Okay?
Okay, stay here.
Any question? No?
So
About this?
It's working? Yeah.
She said
Yeah.
before that you have to come.
Thank you. Okay, so now about this first proposal, it's about questions, it's about feedback, it's about concerns, it's about any suggestion in order to improve it or in order to consider aspects that were not considered, but you are welcome to share anything on this topic, We have a 20 minutes window of time, and if there is no concern, then we go with the pulse by the RAS, if this topic and the process on this topic can go ahead. Anyone? No? You have, Sasha. Or come, if you can. Okay, you are going to meet somewhere. Check where you're going. Sorry. If there is very few people, you can take your time, but we were thinking...
Hello, I'm Sasha.
Sasha,
I live over
one
there.
second, sorry. There will be just a slight gong around 2 minutes in order to give us...
I don't have a speech, it's just a question.
No, I know. Please go ahead.
So I'm sorry if maybe I'm misinformed or something, but wasn't that something we wanted to do for a very long time, and it wasn't allowed because the ROR wasn't updated?
Yeah.
So it's just, maybe I don't know things, you know.
So why these ideas are happening? And there is resonance on this question. Okay, so yes, that was part of the verdict of 12 August 2022, that there would not be decision-making process on policies, neither from the Resident Assembly nor from the governing board, as per the verdict. The verdict has been stayed. So when there was an appeal on the verdict, there was also the request by the foundation that it is stayed, and therefore the application of the verdict is not happening. Therefore, this mention, which was on the verdict, is not applicable, and therefore we can have right now this RAD process without the ROR being complete. Am I clear? Maybe not. It's a bit, yeah?
How valid is the 300-person thing?
Sorry.
Because
How valid is?
I just want to know for myself the clarity, because it's always like 10% or 300. How valid is it, and how possible is it?
It's as valid as we would decide. Hence the decision-making process. If you have another suggestion about a percentage, as Renou was talking about, yet it was decided by the one who checked and heard different voices to propose as such 300 signatures, however the number of population we are. Yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to come back on the 300, meaning that if this resolution is passed, the Secretary can also use it and find 300 people to ask for a RAD, correct?
Indeed, but it goes to a vote, and then one votes on it.
Okay, so that will be only to bring a topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. You hear me?
Yeah.
François. The only small stipulation I would have regarding the 300 is that maybe we should put a time frame on it, that like it's something which is valid for a certain number of years, so that we don't get stuck in a formulation that later on for some reason or other, I can't imagine the reason right now, we might get stuck in something that was not intended to start with. So we could say for so many years, 300, and after that we revise it.
So the collect of signatures shall be within a certain time period. No, but that's your proposal, yeah? No, I didn't get it. Yeah.
Francois is suggesting that this whole idea of 300 persons calling an RAD have a time limit for the next couple of years. That's what he's saying. Does anybody else have any feedback on that? I noted.
So knowing also that there will be a 2 weeks feedback period after that, so you can give, and please give your feedback in writing by sending an email, or they will explain the next step, but basically there's a 2 weeks window time period for giving feedback. So these feedback are recorded, more can be given. Anyone else? Okay, so then, sorry.
Did I understand that right? I think that's quite hilarious that the foundation put a stay on an order which the order said we could not make there and we could not make any binding decision. So they got a stay on that, which actually now works in our favor. Is that correct?
It is correct. Hence, we are also asking the removal of the stay. So if the removal is granted, and that's why some members of the working committee went to the High Court today. So if the removal of the stay of the verdict provisions is given, then we will have to suspend the resident assembly decision making if they are on policies.
Oh, so why are we asking for the stay? If that works in our favor.
It's only one part that works in our favor, all the rest doesn't work. You may remember the August 12th judgment by the magistrate, Mr. Abdul Kudos, that said that the groups have to work in mutuality, and it's not the governing board leading, and all three, the Residents' Assembly, the International Advisory Committee, and the Working Committee have to work in mutuality. So that is what we state, so that would be a pity if... The unfortunate thing is these, so yes, theoretically we would have to see what the legal situation is in a few weeks.
My apprehension is that the community, with all its good efforts, is continuously led along, and then somehow or other runs into a wall, and it creates frustration. It creates, with all the effort, and then something happens and it didn't work because of that. For example, the thing which says an asterisk as inscribed in the master list held by the resident service and so on. Reno, you led me through the fact, and I think you should explain that we are continuously questioned whether we have the authority, isn't it?
Correct.
So I think this goodwill which is showing itself now should not get frustrated.
Our working committee has responded several times to this statement by the foundation office that we could not take any decisions because the master list was not updated. You'll also remember in that August 12th judgment that the judge asked that register of resident be updated in 2 months. Now it's nearly 1 year. And as you can see, there's, a lot of fanfare of going from house to house, or now it's adding the organ. And so perhaps also the advice is to not frustrate the effort of updating the ROR, even though our working committee has stated that this work was already done in 2020, I think, or something like that. And the Residents' Assembly anyway doesn't do the voting based on the ROR, it does the voting based on the Oroville master list, which is why I have added that. It says, as inscribed in the master list held by the Residence Service, because Oroville holds its own master list. With or without the ROR, Oroville maintains a master list. And the voting is done through the master list, which they have.
So just to clarify, there is a difference between ROR and our master list.
Yes.
Okay, let's hope. Sorry, I like it.
I think it's important to note that legally it seems that they are seeming to only recognize the ROR and not the master list as going forward. So what do we do in this dilemma?
I think in matters like that, I'm not a lawyer, but we have always proceeded with the precedent that existed, and we have taken all the decisions so far with the master list, so I don't know why we would now diverge from precedent, even though we are being challenged by it, so I think that's what we would argue.
Yeah, that's just a legality or technicality or whatever. The ROR is the official list of what constitutes the Residence Assembly. So this ROR is a legal document. Apart from that, the master list is maintained by the Residence Service and can be used for whatever we want within, and is our list of residents, newcomers, children of Oroville and all. But the ROR is a official document that has all the residents of Oroville that has gone through an internal process and that is above 18 and entered into this document. And that's what constitutes the Residence Assembly.
And also in this whole voting thing, the RAS actually that's why you sign in when you come to this meeting. That's why when you vote, they go through the master list. They make sure that people who are voting are Orovillians. That is their job. That is what they do.
And just in my understanding, to undermine the ROR and to let it linger on and is not finished and so on and so forth is to not recognize the Residence Assembly.
I believe so. I believe it's a way to frustrate decision making, and that's why there's always going to be new things, verifications at homes, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we're in this catch-22 that I don't know how we're going to build a town if we can't even, finish an ROR with 3,000 people.
Any other feedback or question?
Are there any more questions? Then I'll have the RAS take a pulse, and then I'll move on to the next one, and hooray, we can finish this procedure.
Our first part of the procedure.
Well, actually, this pulse is just to see if the attendees of this meeting feel that we are ready to move on and announce the feedback on the first proposal of this decision-making process. If so, please tell us. Or you can raise your hand if we are ready for the next step. I mean, publish the report. It's our task. And then we will invite the feedback from the community at large, collect the feedback, and give it further to the petitioners for processing. Okay. Hands up. Yeah. Thank you.
Let's just. So yeah, well, we were supposed to have a breather and a shaker, so whatever, if you feel like shaking yourself and shaking yourselves, please do so and refresh your mind. And now we are going to start the other topic. So the emergency powers, the RA provides emergency powers for 6 months to the Resident Assembly Working Committee. And Renaud is also the initiator of this proposal. So yes, she will present approximately 10 minutes and we will have another window of kind of 20 minutes, discussion, feedback, input, suggestions.
So this proposal, all these proposals were made in the month of May, and there was feedback in that general meeting, and they were taken in and included. So right now we have a very long and frustrating collective process, and we can't really respond sometimes to the need of the moment. So it was felt that maybe for 6 months, so I will read you, to be able to appoint people to posts that are statutory posts or as needed, so to give that power to the working committee so we don't have to go through this long election selection process at the moment when we need it, so that we can act with a little bit more speed in a legal manner. So I'll go through the thing of reading it. Why this RAD? In the exceptional circumstances that Oroville finds itself in today, in which the power of the RA to organize itself is denied by the governing board, its secretary, and its committees, there is a need for the RA working com, Arvind, Bharati, Shali, Hemant, Mayal, Sauro, Vali, to be able to appoint, replace, or add members and constitute groups for the Oroville organization in a speedy manner. The RA provides emergency powers for a period of 6 months. This was suggested in the meeting that it be given only for 6 months, beginning from the day this vote is passed, to the working committee selected by the Residents' Assembly, namely Aravinda, Bharati, Shali, Hemant, Sauro, Mayal, and Vali, to appoint, replace, or add members or constitute groups as needed to fulfill Oroville's organizational needs and statutory functions as required by the Oroville Foundation Act. The RA Working Com will have the right to intervene in the membership of the following groups. So I just listed some groups that those could be. The Working Committee, the Funds and Assets Management Committee, the Town Development Council of the Residents' Assembly, the Land Board, the Entry Board of the Residents' Assembly, the Housing Board of the Residents' Assembly, any other group that is performing functions for the collective organization of Oroville. And the RA, the working committee, RA working committee will also have the power to constitute new groups as needed, example, an exit committee. Because those are part of our obligations as the residents. We are supposed to formulate a master plan. We are supposed to deal with entry, and we're supposed to deal with exit. There are certain powers that we have that are our duties and responsibilities. Because in the past, I have noticed that the working committee, even in all goodwill, is not always their choice might not always be correct. Okay, let me just continue and I'll get to that part. These emergency provisions will be dissolved if the majority constitution of the current working committee members, Aravinda, Bharati, Shali, Hemant, Mayal, Sauro, Vali, changes before the end of the 6-month period. The 6-month emergency power period. So if a majority of the current working committee is replaced, then these emergency powers would be suspended. So that means, does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Considering the current exceptional circumstances, this emergency provision may be extended or repealed through an RID emergency vote proposed by the residents with 300 signatures, or by the Residents' Assembly Working Committee as named above. And then, in case there is a person that is chosen that is a real pain in the ass, if a person appointed to the post through the above emergency measures is deemed unfit, or is not performing, or is ill, or whatever, or if the community is not comfortable with that person, at least 100 people may submit to the working committee to reconsider the appointee. So if there's any feedback, that would be great. If you have improvements on this emergency powers, that would be great.
So any questions, concerns, please come or raise your hand for the mic.
No, for the 6 months, no? I understand that the 6 months is the period during which nomination can be made.
Yes, correct. They,
That's correct.
Yeah, we're giving
So
them powers for 6 months.
Yeah.
And at the end of 6 months, we vote, do they continue? If they're doing a good job, do they still need these powers? Or are they like making a mess of it? No more.
Okay, we are talking of the powers given to the working committee.
To
correct?
nominate people, correct.
Okay. People nominated...
To appoint people.
Yes. People, for example, nominated to FAMC. They have been nominated on a certain date, but they will continue their work for a certain time. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, the normal time that we
Okay.
usually go with the policy. I would assume it would be,
Okay.
I think for the FAMC it's 3 years, I'm not sure, maybe 4.
Yeah,
Land board is
whatever.
3.
Yeah, okay, clear. And so that means the... No, it's all right.
That means that they could just, for example, the FAMC has a fixed amount of people that are supposed to be in it.
Yes.
And, in the last selection, they only four members were chosen. So in this manner, they're not the 7-member
9.
committee they're supposed to be, or whatever the exact number is. So the working committee could actually approach people that they thought would have the skills and agreed to be in it and would be in it, and so it could function instead of again having to go through a whole 1-day election, selection, random hat thing. It's all too long in the situation we're in.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Do I understand correctly that the working committee could extend itself and these powers for 6 months just by themselves? They don't need anybody's influence. They could just keep on extending themselves 6 months at a time with this.
Probably. It ends after 6 months.
And then they are the ones who can extend it. Part 2 of the sentence.
Good question.
Or the RA working committee as named above.
It may be extended by an RD emergency vote or the RA recall.
By the residents, 300 signatures, or the working committee as named above. So they can extend them their own powers 6 months at a time. Unless we do a 300 and rescind this.
Yeah. So what would you suggest to improve that?
I'm just noting it.
No, it's true. So that's also why, I think the 300 thing is super important. Actually, I think in Oroville we put a lot of attention into how we select people, but actually if we had a very simple way for the community to express its dissatisfaction, it might, with persons in any position, that might be a little less painful and it might be more practical, or like we had to do with the last working committee when we voted those members out because out of no confidence. So do you have any suggestion about how to fix this? Would you come and say that in the mic?
So one feedback is could be that a proposal could be that it's not applicable for itself, and therefore it is whenever it is about the working committee, the extended power can be given only by the resident assembly and not by itself. That could be a proposal. And we can think of many other ideas and feedback which can be given during the feedback period. It's not perfect by itself.
Yeah, I think I'm going to talk to the same point. And I also feel like the emergency powers shouldn't be possible to be extended by the working committee itself, no? They could suggest saying, guys, we still need it, and then there needs to be a vote in some way.
Good point. I'll amend that. That's a good point.
I think to prevent one single working committee member to veto that, one should say something in which form they come to a decision, not unanimously or by majority. There are 7 people, Mile is out, so we have to give a number, simple majority. I mean, that's always like a judgment. You can always have a dissenting vote, but if the majority of the working committee feel that is necessary and 2 are against it, it should not veto it. So there has to be some kind of operation there. Because it reads as if they have to be unanimous. That all members of the working committee decide that. And there may be somebody who says no. That should be possibly he should be by himself stand aside and let the majority do it. Or if not, he should be then overruled, I guess.
Okay, did everybody understand that? So instead of it being the working committee unanimously, I would add a majority of the working committee members would be to propose whatever.
Something or whatever, yeah.
Okay.
Something.
Any other feedback?
I just have a question about the word intervene in the membership of the following groups. Right before that, you said appoint, replace, or add members. And I think that's what you mean by intervene, but it's very vague.
So we could repeat the wording there, I guess, to be more precise.
So, Shanti, what word would you use instead of intervene? It says intervene in the memberships of the following groups. Here.
Yeah, to appoint, replace, or add members.
You would like me to say rather to be able to appoint, replace, or add members?
Yes, maybe repeat it, but intervene sounds weird.
Fine, done.
Jean-François in the back?
Hi. Yeah, the term emergency powers tend to ring some bell. We have to be very cautious about introducing such a thing. I'm trying. Oh, okay. Is it better? Yeah, the term emergency power like rings some bell, and we have extremely cautious to introduce such a thing. We had some discussion in the joint meetings with the members of the working committee, and unfortunately they are not here, but like some of them were not really in favor of, I mean, they were very how do you say, not very at ease with this proposal. So that would be good also to have their opinion on that. I have a bit reservations around the legitimacy of the people who would be nominated there compared to the legitimacy of the people nominated through a proper full-fledged selection process by the community. Second point that I'm not really, I have a bit some reserves. It's the previous examples of the members nominated by working groups in Euroville. For example, remember not so long ago, a TDC was nominated by a working committee. And we had Mr. Lakshay and Mr. Toby, for example, nominated by the working committee at that time. So, other examples like the Matrimandir has been nominated by working groups. We see that they do their things without any concern about the community. The selection of the line board also was nominated by the working groups, and now it's getting a bit wild. Basically also I'm really, this way of that the working groups select members of other working groups, it rings some bells for me. Like it's always steps toward some kind of oligarchy that we really would like to get out of. I understand that it's emergency thing, it's supposed to be only for a very short period of time, but will it solve really something right now for having that? Especially that if the first proposal is accepted, it means that the community as such, 300 people can propose other members, like in emergency way. And finally, I think the main problems that we face right now for finding people in the FMC is not to select them, is to have candidates. And the working committee itself cannot create by magic good people who are willing to go to the FMC. It's still, I think it should still be a community process.
Thank you.
Okay, so for anybody who also shares this concern, I just want to remind you that there will be a feedback form sent out this weekend, so you can add your voice to that.
So I'm happy that Philip said that. For me also, it reminds me of what the governing board office and those appointed working groups are doing. And I think, first of all, it has been always very challenging to select fitting working group members throughout the time that I have been here. So, and we have come up with an elaborate process, which I think it's not wise to discard all our processes just for a quick fix. So I don't believe in that, and something doesn't feel right. So I think we should stick to what we as a community have agreed on and take the effort in choosing people wisely.
Okay.
Yeah, a quick word on what Fred mentioned. If the working committee is 7 people, if they don't need to be all agreed, that means the majority will be 4 people. 4 people choosing member of FAMC for 4 years. I think it's not very safe, and especially after what have been said just before me. So it's a consensus or it's no consensus. But somebody who cannot reach a 7 yes should not be nominated on an emergency for 4 years.
Actually, you know, there is a line that is missing, I see now, because I would, this was until the normal selection process would take place. That is somehow gotten taken out of this draft. So I don't know if that makes it more palatable, that these provisions only exist until the selection process takes place.
Anyhow, if you cannot release 7 names, you are not representative of the community, according to me.
If you can, say that again, please.
If you cannot rally 7 names on your behalf, you are not representative of the community.
Okay, good point.
Yeah, it's on the same line. I agree with Jean-François and Ciao. No, the point is that to go by majority in that thing makes it weak. This is an emergency system, and like Jean-François said, you know, it's for a certain period, and we should not think of it as if it's always like forever, because we always have this tendency to treat the things that we have to think about as if they will last forever. No, impermanence. This is not permanent. This is just that we need now. That's all. But we want the majority, the unanimity.
Okay,
Yep.
so unanimity is, I kind of actually see that point. I think unanimity is going to have to be the way. And I mean, this last thing that it says that maybe we can also make stronger, we add the line about until a selection process takes place. And maybe we can make the thing about 100 persons sending in a petition for them to reconsider. I don't know how to make that stronger. Either the working committee that receives it has to publish that, and then it has to go up for, in front of in a general meeting, for example. That could very well be, So I don't know how to make that stronger, but I would look forward to your feedback on this one. I agree this is a bit tricky. It just was frustrating to me to see that we were also so bogged down by processes that we couldn't move. But I do see your point, all of you, and thanks for that, Philou, and thanks for that. I do see your point. And yeah, and Jean-François. Anything else?
I was also going to suggest the sentence of until the next selection process, I think it's the safest thing, because then we're also staying in the rhythm. But other than that, I also thought maybe it's for a year or a certain amount of time and not for the whole time of a selection.
You're saying put a time limit to those nominees for a year until the selection process.
Yeah, like for a year or till the next selection process.
Whatever comes first. Yeah.
Like Philippe, I feel not very comfortable with this one, to give so much power to just 7 persons. And I understand the principle and the idea behind, but somehow something feel, seeing what has happened here now in Oroville, and about everything taking so much power, it can just be turned against us completely, these things, by the people in power now. And also when you see, for me maybe that's the same for Phil, it reminds us too much what is happening currently in France. So it's, they say it's for emergency, and then suddenly it comes as a rules and a fixed rules and as a law. And we have to, I will be very careful about this one.
This is about nomination, not about creating rules.
Yeah, but still, it's, I don't know. I can only share
This is about mustering people, because I agree, we did put a lot of work in the selection process, but many people also feel very uncomfortable and don't want to participate in the selection process.
Yes.
They don't want to be judged by a bunch of random people.
It's true. This I can understand, because I don't know. I understand the point, because our selection process is also much too long. This I agree, and I never understood fully why there was this all this long feedback and whatever. But if this is happening, we have to be very careful how we process it.
And one thing, because I agree with you, it could also be misused. I have taken pains to name the members of the working committee, so it can't be used by any working committee. It's this working committee at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important that our working committee has enough power or possibilities to do what they do because they're doing a good job. I believe in these. So I think our concern is only about, suppose they all get kicked out and then we end up with 7 different people. So naming them is a good thing. But I think it's also very important for them to be able to take quick actions because that's what's happening all the time. And they're like swimming with their hands on their back. So it's not okay. They need to have the tools that they need.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. That's also where I was coming from, but yeah.
So I'm just reading that sentence again, to which, who was it? You, I think. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I know you work in Portus, and I've met a lot of people last year. Sorry, Joel. Okay. So it doesn't ring to me that the working committee can just extend its own emergency powers. It states quite clearly that it's only through an RAD emergency vote. So that's that. Another thing I wanted to say is that I understand right now we're just discussing this because we're all very conscious people who don't want a totalitarian government in the end. But right now we are talking about a working committee that has received over how many names of support I mean, they've stood here before us and literally, I mean, we do have trust in them, right? Yes. So instead of perhaps maybe outlining the process of their powers and like the conditions of their powers, why don't we just, instead of that, once describe the emergency situations more clearly instead, so that it is clear when they can invoke that through the vote, of course. Because it doesn't make sense to keep refining the system and like, oh, we can take out the system if so and so and blah, blah, blah. Why don't we just outline a clear situation in which you understand, right?
Did. It's not on this document. I explained why I considered this an emergency, and it's because the governing board, the secretary are all hostile towards the RA. That's what creates this emergency situation. They don't recognize the RA. The FMC doesn't recognize the RA. Any of their committees and groups don't recognize the RA.
So then if that can be added and worded very clearly that this is only a solution for this circumstance and that is it, then we don't need to argue about the future anymore. It's just literally about the present.
Sacha, do I hear something like that you would describe more the conditions in which it will intervene? Yes. It will come such situations, such as, for example, that a working group will not have a quorum, or a working group will not have, and then it needs such emergency powers to be activated.
Exactly.
Something like that. Okay. So specific conditions.
I'm going to read out the feedback I've gotten. That we would add that the appointments would be only for 1 year or until the next selection process took place, that the working committee cannot extend itself, that emergency powers cannot be extended by the working committee but only by the RA, to make that clear, that it would have to be a majority of the working committee member, not a majority, it would have to be a unanimity by the working committee members for these appointments, and conditions, write out some conditions on how these emergency powers would be applied. Is that correct?
Is there anything more? We still have some time.
With your permission, I will step out of my role in the RAS and just give my opinion. I would like to emphasize the fact that in case, for any reason, there is a change and the power comes back to the resident assembly, okay, we will have to operate fast. Okay, we will have to name FMC, we will have to fill up a lot of things. So we need this. Even if it's there's a lot of contradiction, we need this kind of.
Can you give it to Julia, who is next?
Thanks. Regarding the conditions, I would suggest to phrase it, for example, so that we're not limiting the decision in these circumstances.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else on the list? Any other concerns, questions, comments? Fred?
Go, 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 go. Vous êtes mignon, hein?
It's true. I mean, suddenly overnight, they have to make a decision, like you said, and they need to be feeling that they have the power to do so. So if, as you mentioned the names, we express our trust. I mean, we don't know what the court is saying tomorrow. And as he said, we suddenly have to organize. We can't lose that energy. I think we have to be able to empower the people we trust to act on our behalf. That doesn't give them forever. We are not changing the constitution of our collective mutuality. We're just saying in this particular moment of attack, move and feel that you have the confidence of the community.
You want to respond? I did not quite understand.
Oh. So, Fred, my understanding is that you would like to reformulate it as a vote of confidence, basically, for them to get...
Sasha said it's true. I mean, it's not we are not changing the law.
Yeah.
We are just facing an unprecedented process of sudden acceleration which is required, where a collective body is unable to follow. That's all. It can always be put back. There can be a recall clause and all these things. But the court says something, and then before the next appeal in the Supreme Court comes, you have that week time to set things right. We are wasting that week, that window, before then the appeal gets effective in the next court. We should do something constructive.
Do people understand that point? Does everybody understand why that might happen? Okay.
I just wanted to reiterate that there is anyway a healthy balance proposed today about giving these nominations up to a year or until the next selection process. So what is happening is of course, I had the same concerns as Phil was putting, but yeah, we also need to adapt to the situation. So this is a kind of a boundary which we are putting on ourselves. So there is that adaptability, the swiftness of taking a decision, and yet there is the backup that eventually we have the community decision taking precedence. So I think it's a healthy balance. That's all.
If and thank you for that, Samrat. If anybody had other ideas, because Philip rightly pointed out there have been blunders in appointments. So if there is a mechanism, I mean, I've put 100 people, but maybe it's 300. Maybe the emergency power is to come in by the residents, and 300 people say a house. That's also possible. To be, to use the RAD1 for that. So, or what if you can think of something else that I can add into this second proposal, that some how to mechanize the removal of people, like calling a GM or something. So it can't be also abused, because you can't just have, 100 people keep writing all the time, and then you're also tying up the process. So, maybe it has to happen in a GM, because all our processes are very much favoring people sitting at home and don't do much for people that actually take the time to participate in a collective process, which that's what the community is about, and that's what, conscious citizenry and governance is about. And that's why I think it's so great that you all came.
Okay, I have Sasha here again.
Hi, sorry. So, about the last point also. Yeah, I speak from your approval. I would say if we're deciding that 300 is 300, that it's like a relevant number, let's keep to it, no? Why 100? Yeah. Either we trust our working committee completely. The 7 people already unanimously have to appoint a person that has to agree. A lot of things have to add up in order for an appointee to actually exist.
Okay, so wait, Sasha, if I get you right, you're saying instead of adding 100 persons, we say 300 people, because that's a lot of people.
Yeah, so what I was going to say, either remove that entirely or have exactly 300. It's not like I'm imposing things right now. I'm just saying it makes sense to either have 300 or to remove that rule altogether.
Okay, so 300 persons, what happens then? Do they go to a general meeting?
Well, we either call an emergency RAD, or the 7 people that are working with this, 6 people that are working with this provisional person, complain about them to the community. I don't know how that would work, honestly. Either we read their reports and realize, oh, okay, this person is useless, let's vote them out. And we start an emergency RAD, or I don't know, I honestly sort of trust those 7 people to find a relevant person.
They have made mistakes. I mean, he's quite right. Look at the TDC is a disaster. And the Matrimony are also not so great. So no, it's not. They're not always right.
Right, but 6 months and then
yeah, ça va. 6 months, ça
emergency
va.
situation. A lot of things have to add up. And
So maybe what we should do is limit the appointment of the people for 6 months. No, that doesn't work. No. Okay.
Okay, Reno?
All right, I take your point, Sasha. Maybe make it 300. Maybe employ the emergency RAD method, and it goes for a vote. Maybe that's the simplest way.
Excuse me. Sorry to disturb. It's not because this working committee will have emergency power to nominate the people that we can just cancel all kind of feedback. So this working committee selection for this group could be at least presented for feedback to the community, that they take their final decision with some kind of return from the community. We keep them the power to choose, but at least there is a 1 week or 3 days feedback period that if somebody is a real pain in the ass for the communities, they know it if they don't know it yet. I mean, I have been in a selection committee where everybody worked out something that the new FIMC will include any Eurovillian but Uli, and because at the end of the day there was a vacant position, the new people selected decided to take Uli because he have some knowledge, whatever. So yeah, I think some return from feedback from the community should be included at one moment or another.
Okay, thank you. That's a very valuable suggestion. I saw Ankuli's hand up, but I would like to close. So is anybody else with a burning question or comment who was already in the list? No. Okay, so then Ankuli will be our last contribution.
So I just had this idea that came, maybe you thought about it, I don't know. The working committee always has resource people. Maybe these resource people can be called then and to help the decision. That's
That would not stand for the legal cases.
So Samrat, you mean they don't have any official status, so it would become legally complicated?
Yeah, I think the feedback period, and that means it gets somehow ratified by the community. I think that's not a bad idea. Also, legally, it would stand the test.
Yeah,
It has to be short, means like within a period, 1 week, 2 weeks, or what? So, 3 days. 3-day feedback period. And, okay.
Yeah, it brings to my question, how long it takes to do that? You know, we want to give emergency powers to the working committee, to nominate people and all that. How long it takes? Did we make a kind of timeline on that? That's what maybe Natasha wanted to point out, but...
Okay,
No?
so right now in the proposal that's there, Tom, there's no timeline as such, but I think this has been very valuable, the idea to outline more the process in which they will be selecting or appointing people, no? So that will, if that is integrated in the next proposal, I'm sure it will include a timeline.
No, because before when Frederic said that this thing has to answer maybe emergency need. You know, so I want to know, is it a 1 week business or is it a 1 month business or what is it?
No, the whole thing, this whole emergency powers is for a period of 6 months.
No, that I know, but to get effective, to get
Immediately.
operational.
Ah. Well, I guess then it would be that it would be immediate pending the feedback.
Okay, no, just that we
Think
work
about
on
it.
that to know how long it takes.
All right. So I would like to close now. Thank you so much. I think really this discussion has brought out a lot of points for the petitioners to think about and to integrate. I've said it already, but you will be sent a feedback form. So please take your time to read this again. And if you have a clear proposal, to bring it in. Because any feedback like here, if it's like, oh, great idea, then it might be incorporated. So then we're going to close the discussion and give some time to the RES to outline the next steps. And then... Huh? Oh, yes. Sorry. The RES will now come to do the pulse first.
Thank you. So please raise your hands if you think that we can proceed for next steps, publish the report, announce the feedback, call for feedback from the community at large, and so on. Clear? Thank you. Well, next steps. In a few days, I hope by Monday, we are going to publish the report of this meeting. And along with this email, you will receive, not only you, all the community members, they will receive the invitation for feedback, so people will share. Actually, now we checked the decision-making policy and we discovered that there is no clear time frame for this feedback period. Well, then we will check again with the petitioners, with the representatives of petitioners, and see what is the deadline for this feedback. It might be 1 week, 2 weeks, but because after that they would need to consolidate and integrate this feedback into the proposals. And then we will call for the follow-up residents' assembly meeting. Thank you. And I was told
Tatiana,
that...
can
yes.
I ask you a question?
Sure.
So it doesn't have to be 2 weeks? We
No.
could make the feedback period 1 week and then vote?
Yes.
That would be much better.
Not vote, but just to, yes, to pass that feedback to you, to hand it over to you for processing, for integrating.
It would be great. If the sooner we could do it, the better.
At your service. Well, now I was told that Jasmine would like to announce something.
Well, it's very simple. It was at the last Wednesday meeting. We felt that normally we like to have one community meeting per month at least. That was agreed and planned, and that's why we have this famous magic meeting team. We tried to make it happen, but obviously June was a very thin month. Many people away, many people sick. It's still going on to some extent. So we're super happy this meeting is happening. And then the community felt that, okay, let's also attach to the theoretical, relatively dry technical matter, let's attach a community time. So it was decided at, 2 days notice. So the result of it, which you see here, we are very, very thinly spread right now as a team. A lot of people are sick, accidents, whatnot, but we did what we could. So as a result, you'll see that we've prepared a space with some chairs spread out. There are more chairs if you need more. There is food. Thank you for everybody that has been, who has been bringing. When you walk, please be careful because there's some mullu that we haven't been able to take away. So it's a little bit wild over there. Also, we had requested a light. Light has not come, so it may just be candlelit dinner, and there's still light. So if all goes well, we will be okay with that. And last request about that, please, please, those who can, if you can stay back and help cleaning up. Because, yeah, right now I don't know how many hands we have from the team. So it would be great if we can do it as a collective action. Also, you'll see that there's some crates of mangoes. They have been contributed in the spirit of a gift economy or economy of solidarity. There's no blue sheet. It's offered. Also, everybody, lots of you have contributed. We feel like we would love to encourage just a flow from the heart and from the hands. In the same way, I would like to say that Oro Orchard right now has got thousands of mangoes lying and waiting to be collected. It's a bit of an emergency situation. So those who like, please, if you want in small groups to organize yourself, I've spoken to Anshul this morning, please contact him, maybe make small groups and make a plan that those mangoes can be going to the community and be enjoyed. So that's for the meal, please enjoy. And one last request, tonight and tomorrow night. Council room is empty until now. We very urgently need somebody. I cannot, Arvind is not here, I've got to be with the cows. So you can contact me or anybody else. Or, yeah, just please, please try and safeguard our council room. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. You want to close? Okay, so then we can close this part of the meeting officially, which is great. So we'll go into the next steps. You will hear from us. There are still some topics that some people here would like to discuss. Maybe you want to stay for that, including the update on what has happened in the forest group meeting. So this portion of the meeting is closed, but whoever wants to now come to the stage to discuss these other topics, please feel free.
So I just would like, just before closing, to thank the Resident Assembly Service members, the new members, to make this happen. So yeah, a little clap for that. I would like to thank also, Stefano and Rajiv for the technical part also. Thank you very much. And thanks to each of us, to each of you who are present to make it something interesting and meaningful and purposeful in this present time. So, and thank you, Renu, also, the initiator, and who put time and energy and work and a lot of care, a lot of love for us. So, yeah. So, yeah, let's have a moment of silence, maybe, just to close officially, a moment of silence together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a beautiful evening.